And welcome to Talk FCB and welcome back here to the channel, guys. And today we are going to be going through some news in the world of FCB from the Champions League, of course, moving on this weekend to our trip to the Mestalla, and also looking ahead to the upcoming international break. All of that and more coming up today. Thank you as always for joining me. Let's do this. And how could I not start with the man of the moment right now, which is Arturo. He has been on everybody's lips after our win against Tottenham. His performance, it was absolutely outstanding on the big stage when it really mattered. He stepped up, and since then it has been absolutely fantastic. So many people talking about him, so many people praising him, and he himself was really happy about that. But it's not only people watching on that have been talking about Arthur, it's actually got to the stage now where his teammates have been talking about his performance in the dressing room. According to Sport, Arthur was actually congratulated by the squad, by really big key names from that first team. They were saying that was fantastic, that was brilliant, what you did out there was so good. And they really did sit up and take notice, looking at his display and how he coped with that occasion at Wembley on Wednesday evening. And even Sport themselves, they loved Arthur's display. Everybody in Spain, the local media, they were really behind it. The cover this morning saw the Brazilian on the front cover with the title, A Student of Xavi, and I absolutely love that title from Sport. And they basically discussed in the article how his performance was really showing Barca DNA in that midfield, like we've all been saying, and right now his stock is massively high. And that just basically leads me on to think, how are we going to see Arturo now implemented into this starting lineup on a regular basis? Because I think that's what we have to see now from Ernesto Valverde. He did the right thing, to be fair to Valverde. You know, he put him in against Tottenham. I think he'd waited too long to use Arthur, but credit where it's due, he put him in there. But now he's going to have the courage, have the bravery to say, look, Arthur performed, Arthur stays, and everything around him can do what they like, because Arthur is in that team and you've got to keep him there. So going to the Mestalla, it's a difficult away game for Valencia, but it doesn't matter. Arthur has already shown that he can play on that big stage, that he can perform under pressure, and that's where he likes to be. That's what he likes to thrive under and play under, that kind of pressure from the opponents, and play him at Valencia. Please Valverde, don't mess this up now. And some quick words now on Lionel Messi, of course, the other man of the moment, the man that has always been in the big moments. And there was so much praise for Messi after that game against Tottenham. I absolutely love that when it happens, you know, when Messi can perform on the big games, and then afterwards you get so many journalists, so many people talking about him, about how great he is. That is what we all love to hear as Barcelona and Lionel Messi fans. And he has been the talk, really, of the footballing world after his magical display against Tottenham. It wasn't only the goals, it was the build-up, it was how he's orchestrated everything that went through Messi in that game. And particularly in the media in the UK, there has been so much praise. But I kind of feel like a lot of people who are coming out in the UK media saying, you know, this is Messi, this is incredible, we've never seen anything like this before. If you watched him a bit more often, if you paid attention to Messi in La Liga, when he does this kind of thing week in, week out, because that's the thing with Messi, it wasn't just this display, it's every single week we're seeing so much quality, and most importantly, so much consistency from this man, Lionel Messi. And I suppose unsurprisingly, really, Messi has been named Champions League Player of the Week. That's the second successive game week now that he's been named that. Firstly, it was after his hat-trick in game week 1, and now in game week 2, Champions League Player of the Week once again. And I cannot wait to play Inter Milan, the next Champions League game for Messi. He's already got 5 goals. What is going to come next? But now moving on to the other side of that game at Wembley, and I'm going to talk about Arturo Vidal first and foremost. He was one of the players who was actually very unhappy coming away at that game against Tottenham, if reports are to be believed in the local Spanish media. Now basically, he thought that he'd done enough against Athletic. He played very well, he was sort of substituted in that game as well, but he thought he'd done enough in that game and previous cameo appearances to earn a starting place against Tottenham. Apparently he'd even told close friends that he believed Valverde would be starting him against Tottenham, but it didn't happen. He was not in the starting lineup, and not only that, but he was subbed on in the 87th minute. He was very unhappy to be subbed on that late, only featuring for just a few minutes. And according to those people close to Arturo Vidal right now, he hasn't really received the minutes that he was promised on his arrival at the club this summer. He believes that he's entitled to much more game time, much more time on the pitch to show what he can do, and that hasn't happened so far under Valverde, and he is not happy about about that whatsoever. And it's going to be really, really interesting now to see how this sort of situation develops in recent weeks. Are we going to see more of Arturo Vidal? Will Valverde sort of not take kindly to this kind of attitude? We got some very big games in October, a lot of fixtures after this international break. It's going to be interesting to see what happens and whether we see more of Vidal coming up. And Vidal was not the only player who was unhappy leaving the stadium on Wednesday night. The other man who was reportedly unhappy leaving that game was none other than Ousmane Dembele, who didn't even feature for a single minute against Tottenham after he was an unused substitute. And Valverde basically opted for Coutinho as part of that front three. And I think, to be honest, Valverde maybe prefers Coutinho in that role simply because if you're going to defend it a 4 across the midfield, if we do revert to a 4-4-2 at times in the game, Coutinho can much more easily slot into the left-hand side in that 4 and do his defensive duties possibly better than Dembele can. But I think this again is a really interesting situation to keep an eye on how Valverde handles this, because right now, you look at that kind of display at Wembley, it was sensational, it was scintillating, and I think you wouldn't really want to change too much about that. You wouldn't want to make any drastic change. I think Coutinho is very, very likely to stay in the lineup. And then suddenly you're saying, where exactly does Dembele come into all this? Where does he come into the picture? Because given his start of the season, Dembele has scored some very important goals. He looked to be hitting some confidence, but now he's out of the team. And if you're being completely honest, if Coutinho stays there, if we stay in this kind of shape, there may not be a way back in for him all that early on. And I think right now, Dembele's going to be hoping for a few cameo appearances, a few more opportunities off the bench, maybe a few more minutes in a second half. We're going to try and win that place back, because right now, Coutinho is there. It was a great performance at Wembley, which wouldn't have helped Dembele's situation. And like I say, it is one for Valverde to manage. He's got to do it correctly. He's a player there, Dembele, cost a lot of money, who isn't really always been there with his confidence. You've got to use that and you've got to manage that in the right way, and that is why Valverde gets paid the big bucks at Barcelona to manage these kind of situations, and it is going to be interesting to keep an eye on it. And finally, guys, on the Champions League, I just want to very vaguely discuss our chances of actually lifting that trophy come the end of the season in Madrid. And yes, it is early days in the Champions League. We're only in the group stage. Anything can happen right now. So many different things happen between now and May. But one thing that I would say is, basically, it's as simple as that. We have to believe. We have to truly, deep down, believe that we can go to the final and win this thing this year. Because as fans and as players, you've got to believe that you can do it. Because as you saw on Wednesday, it doesn't really matter what the circumstances are with Barcelona. We were coming into that game against Tottenham, a tough away game in the Champions League with no confidence. We'd been really struggling week upon week upon week in terms of results, in terms of performance, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, we produced that kind of display. And that is basically what you can say about the Champions League and about ourselves. On any given day, we can beat anyone, and that essentially is what the Champions League is all about. And even if you look elsewhere over the past few days, past few game weeks, at the heavyweights in Europe, they haven't exactly been firing on all cylinders. You look at Real Madrid, who are really going through a major crisis right now under Lopetegui. They lost against CSKA Moscow, 1-0 defeat, and they actually haven't scored a goal in all competitions in over 5 hours of football. They're really, really struggling right now. The loss of Ronaldo, the loss of some key players there with injury, but it's not happening right now for Real Madrid. Man City have not been convincing so far in the Champions League themselves. They lost on the first game week against Lyon, and it took a last-minute goal and a comeback to actually beat Hoffenheim in this midweek. And Bayern Munich, you look at them, they could actually count themselves lucky to come away from their home game against Ajax with just a point, because they were outplayed in that game by Ajax, who came there and really played well, forced Neuer into several big saves. And even Liverpool, you look at last year's finalists, somebody who's got a lot of confidence under Jurgen Klopp, they actually fell against Napoli for a 1-1 thanks to Lorenzo Insigne. And like I say, it is early days, and these group stage games, they're not going to count for a great deal in a few months' time, but I'm just saying, we have to have that belief. It is possible that we can win this. We definitely have the players. We definitely have the big game performances there. But obviously, when it comes down to it, we're going to have to wait and see. But believing, it costs nothing. And just finally, guys, I want to talk to you about the upcoming international break. The final game will be at the Mestalla, then the players will go off to international duty. And in terms of the Spanish squad for the upcoming international break, we're actually going to be playing Wales in a friendly match. And only one Barcelona player is included in that Spanish squad, Sergio Busquets. Sergio Roberto misses out through injury, and Jordi Alba has once again been left out by Luis Enrique, which I think is actually a good thing for us. It is genuinely a blessing in disguise that Jordi Alba is not in the Spanish squad. When you look at how good he's been this season, when he's been rested, when he's been motivated, and when he hasn't been playing in these international breaks, it is definitely a good thing for us that he gets 2 weeks off, he can put his feet up, and after that, in this massive month of October, he can come back gunning and firing on all cylinders. And finally, also on the subject of internationals, more good news comes in the form of Luis Suarez, who was actually elected not to travel on the long journey to play in Uruguay's friendly matches this international break, and will instead stay in Barcelona to get, again, some really crucial rest, some good downtime, that then he can come back after this international break firing and sharp, as we have seen him develop that kind of sharpness in recent weeks. Again, a really good decision that will certainly benefit the team and benefit Barcelona, which is what it's all about. So that is basically it for today's news roundup, guys. Thank you as always for joining me, and thank you as always for all of your support over this game day. It was a fantastic win against Tottenham. I'm really looking forward to the game against Valencia. Hopefully we can follow that up with some more glory, and of course tomorrow will be the match preview for that game. I will see you then. Leave your thoughts down below, but until then, as always, Vesca El Barça.